Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing, getting past that brokenness. Think about that. I have to move past it myself. I really had to move past it myself because that brokenness from the past does tend to keep coming in your mind. But through the grace of God, through grace, through letting go and opening up, and through love, I want to talk to you a little bit later about the unconditional love that my father taught me. And then Sue Barton will be sharing with us, and so will Harry Ollendorf. But first, I want to share a few tidbits about my journey to Unity Village this time and my COVID diagnosis. Yes, I've been diagnosed with COVID. I came home from Unity Village Friday evening, and as I was traveling throughout the day, I was going down the tubes. And at the first plane landing, the ears were okay. But by the time I got to Oakland, I still can't hear after the landing. So, and I came home and I got out the rapid test and I did the rapid test and it came out positive. And I said, thank you, God. Thank you. I am so grateful that I finally got it and I'm going through it and I'm getting over it. If you've one of those that have had it, you might understand that. It's almost a relief. It's almost a relief to just, who knows if you'll get it again. But, you know, after traveling this last week, I've decided that I'm just going into the law of unresistance. It's just time for it. But in any event, I have to say to each of you, there was a real choice point for me on this trip because there's no mask mandate. There's no mandate. We see COVID, we have seen the ups and downs of COVID for almost 3 years now, and we continue to see it. And we continue to see different forms of it across the world. And so I had to make a decision whether I was going to wear a mask on the plane, a mask in the airport, a mask in the hotel. And I, I have to be honest with you. I put it on and took it off, and I put it on and I took it off, and I put it on and I took it off. And I got to the hotel in Overland Park Sunday night, and there was nobody in the hotel with a mask on. And who was standing at the desk checking in? Martha Creek. No mask, and off came my mask, and there was the first hug. Uh, I needed hugs. Don't we all? Don't we all need hugs? Um, geez, I have to tell you, if you're confused, you're not the only one. There were 300 people at the convention, and everybody was confused. we we didn't know whether to put a mask on or take it off. We didn't know whether to hug or not to hug. We didn't know whether to go around in a circle or not to go around in a circle. But all we knew is that it was good to be together. It was good to be with people that were able to bring their divinity with them to a convention. And they did. And it was just lovely to see. By Friday, I learned so much at the convention. And most of what I learned was what others shared about the last 2.5 years. And I learned that we're not alone by any means. And I learned that we're very resilient. And I learned how creative as a species we are. That one Sunday, a bunch of ministers had a Sunday service and presented it like they do. And on Thursday of that week, they were told they couldn't meet again in person. And every single one of them had to creatively come up with something different to do to connect with their congregations. And they did. Some people, can you imagine, had bridge telephone calls and did the service on a telephone call. Some people use Zoom. Some people use Facebook. Some people met outside when they could. Some people still aren't meeting. Some people are beginning to meet inside, and some people never stopped meeting inside. It's just all over the place. And so I went to different workshops, and one of the main workshops I went to was about ministry surviving now. I mean, 4 years ago at the convention, the topic was, let's plan for 2030. Well, we were talking about virtual services in 2030 and what ministry might look like and breaking down the walls of ministry. But it came on a little earlier. And what I learned through all my workshops, and I've told you this before, but I want to share it with you again. We're doing everything right. We really are. The fact that we're doing our services on Zoom and that we're allowing people to communicate, those of us that are doing that are having better success in keeping their congregation tied together than those that are live streaming and then having to log off that and log on to Zoom again. We've got a smooth transition set up to flow from communication to the service to communication. And that's good. That's successful. We're bringing in guest speakers. And more guest speakers are willing to share what their unity knowledge and what they bring. And I had a good time. You know, your minister is, well, he's a salesman also. I've told you that before. So I got us booked up for the rest of the year. We've got some great speakers coming. I have to tell you, I'm really excited. Reverend Michael Gott, who is the music director at Unity of Houston, will be doing a service and the music for us. I told David Trolley, and he was just all excited. Yes, Sue K. Rowley, who was Richard McDeesey. Richard McDeesey wrote a lot of the songs that we sing, has been in the Posse or the New Thought music movement for some time. They'll both be coming as guest musicians and working with David Trolley. And Richard McDeesey, Reverend Richard McDeesey, is going to be doing the service and the music for us one Sunday. And a couple of other people. I won't bore you with that. You'll see it as it's coming up. But I think we've got an exciting summer and fall coming up and then going into the Christmas holidays. Yes, I just said Christmas. But you know, so it's June. We're halfway through 2022. It'll be Christmas before you know it. Yep, it'll be Christmas before you know it. So what else did I learn at the convention? Well, one of the most exciting things, and I want to share this with you because most of you know that I teach for Unity Worldwide Spiritual Institute and the Urban Ministerial School, and I teach ministry at the end of life. And that's really an exciting class. And it was wonderful because I went to the ordination on Monday of both schools and the field licensing program. And we must have had 60 ordinants come through, which is just wonderful because we need them. And a lot of the students that went through and several that I had in my class were from our international program. And our international program is just growing phenomenally. Africa, Nigeria, Bhutan, United Kingdom, Malaysia. And I got to speak with our international department and see photos from the international department. And Shad Groverland, who, if you remember, Shad is the chair or is the CEO of Unity Worldwide Ministries, showed a video of a minister in Nigeria who wrote and sent a video of his service and shared that they so believed in New Thought that he wanted to become a Unity minister. Could he help? Could Shad help them become a Unity ministry? So here was a full-fledged ministry, and they want to join the Unity movement. So exciting, so exciting. And we ministries have an opportunity to assist that international department because it's not expensive from the way we look at it, but from the way they look at it, it's expensive. So I'm going to be asking the board to think about helping sponsor one of those international Unity ministers to become an ordained Unity minister in their country. What a wonderful project. What a wonderful happening. The education department, I'm really happy with. You know, Unity is doing a lot of healing right now, and Shad Groverlin is really helping with that. I mean, healing from the same things that we're healing from. Healing from lack thought, healing from racism, healing from white privilege, healing from one new thought organization trying to be on top of another new thought organization. We all believe the same thing, but we're all different in our own way. We all need financial resources. We all have a school. And so we're beginning to heal that division in new thought. And through education, through the coming together of education, and there is talk now, and it so pleases me, about the coming together of the new thought movement, of religious science, of divine science, of all those new thoughts movements, and unity coming together as a new thought movement. Shad Groverlin said at the convention, "We've been saying for the last 30 years that unity is what the world needs. New thought is what the world needs. We're still saying it. It's time we do something about it. And the only way we're going to be able to do something about it is come together and bring our love to that togetherness and share it with the world." One of the other things that I'm very excited about, and I am excited to share with you, and I'm very excited to share with Lise Fleming, and I think she's on, at least I see her standing behind David Fleming in that picture that they have up, but the Earth Care Ministry is really taking off again, and I'm very excited about that. And I went to several workshops on earth care, and I'm going to be talking with the board about bringing, we don't have a physical location, so we're not able to focus in our physical plant on recycling on all of the issues that we have, such as climate and plastics and all of those issues. We don't have a physical get together, but our consciousness. We are able to work on our consciousness and create that consciousness for the world. We had a gentleman speak at the conference as a keynote. I'm not able to say his last name right now. I believe it's Rowe, Salish Rowe. He's from Stanford, multiple degrees, and he's a systems engineer. And he put on a presentation about the drastic condition that our planet is in. The drastic condition. And I mean, you can look at, everybody has a different story from this side to this side, that everything about our planet being in disaster state is baloney, to everything about our planet being in a disaster state isn't as disastrous as it really is. So you've got the means and the extremes. So you have to take a look and see where you belong. But, I have to say that Salish was way to the left on it. And I enjoyed that presentation because he stood up and he said, "Let's all become vegan tomorrow. Let's stop the meatpacking industry." It is one, and I'm not going to go into too much detail because I'm going to ask him and the Earth Care Department, but Salish I'm going to invite to speak to us, so that we can make up our own mind and really get involved in some of these issues, because they're drastic issues for our planet. And we know that. Coming together with people from around the world in unity, we know that. And our consciousness is important to bring to these issues. There's no time to think about them. It's time to do something about it. And that's hard because we're not the only ones moving through the muck and drudge of it all, of these last 2.5 years. Let me tell you that everybody is. I did my workshop on death, dying, and grieving in America today, and it was both remote and in person. And the stories of grieving were just amazing, about the resiliency of going through the losses of losing congregations, losing buildings, changing the way you're doing things, the people that lost, ministers that had congregants have family members and themselves being taken out the door in ambulances and never coming back, all over the world. And so it's time that we adjust, I think, to this new normal. It's time that we look at making choices. It's a choice point. It's a choice point for us to make in our own lives in this human experience, to bring our divinity to it, to bring the knowledge that we have everything we need to survive it. No matter what the outcome is, we have everything we need to survive it in our divinity. And I ask you to call that forward for yourselves, for our ministry, and for our planet. So we'll talk more about these things, and I'll fill you in a little bit more as the year goes on about some thoughts from the convention. But right now, I'd like to talk about Father's Day a little bit, because, you know, Angelica, I got so excited about what you were sharing about healing, because, you know, I had a healing this past week about my dad. I have to tell you all, you know, I wanted to share what gifts my father gave me. And I have to tell you, I was having trouble finding them. Excuse me. I was having trouble finding them, you see, because as Angelica said, I have some healing work to do. And we all have some healing work to do about our mothers, about our fathers, about our husbands, about our wives, about our brothers, our sisters. So I had to open up and do some healing work. And what I really realized is that my father taught me about, excuse me. Oh, I didn't think I was going to do this. There we go. My father taught me about unconditional love. My dad was an Army guy. I mean, he was an Army lifer. He was tough. He fought in World War II. He was a sergeant. He had a sniper following him around for a week trying to shoot him. He was a tough guy. He and my mother went over to Korea and lived after the Korean War and tried to get things back in place there. And then they came back and lived in New York, were stationed at Fort Dix and had me. And here I am, this little boy who really was not what Dad expected, I don't think. I mean, this is my story that you're hearing now. I never knew what Dad's story was. But I'll tell you what, folks, I never showed up as a tough, rugged Army guy. I didn't even like to play Army when I was a little boy. And I lived in a neighborhood with all Army people. And everybody got into playing Army. But I forced myself to play Army. Life was always different for me because at a very, very young age, I knew I was gay. I knew it. But in 1960, you couldn't talk about it. You just couldn't talk about it. So everything I did, every thought that I had, even into my divinity, I would not let fully express because I was afraid to be authentic. I was afraid to be me. And I have to say that my dad was authentic. He was 100% authentic. And so here you've got this tough Army guy, and his son's in 5th grade, and he's up at the park with a bunch of friends, And of course, now think back. This is the 60s, folks. And guess what we were playing? Spin the bottle. Well, unfortunately, the way they played it was the boys stood off to the side and the girls sat in a circle, and it was the boys' turn to spin the bottle, and it stopped on the girl that the guy got to kiss. So there were all girls in that circle. And when it was my turn, the bottle landed on Rita Dady, and I really wanted it to be Ricky Dorfer. And so I had to kiss Rita Dady. Wow. I kind of enjoyed it, to tell you the truth. A kiss is a kiss. But you know, there's Dad, and here's me. And throughout this whole time period, I don't know how he did it, but he loved me. He supported me. He walked through everything I walked through. And how wonderful it was when at the age of 27, I finally had the guts to sit down and tell my mom and dad. And once he was done crying and offering to find the best help that money could buy me, and I told him I had just had 2 years of therapy and was quite happy, and then he cried again, he loved me through that. He did. He loved me through it. I was always his. And I'm proud of it. And I thank you, Dad. Thank you for loving me for who I was. Now, I was on the phone the other day with Sue Barton. It was a week and a half ago or so. And I've heard a lot about Sue Barton's mother, but I said to her, you know, Sue, I've heard a lot about your mother, but I've never heard about your father. And I had an angle. I wanted to ask her to speak at this Sunday service. And before I could ask her, she started telling me stories about her father and was going on and on. And when she finally took a breath, I said, well, would you like to tell the congregation about it? And she, oh, okay. So Sue, tell us a little bit about your dad, would you? And unmute.
Of course. Thank you very much. Thank you for your stories and what you shared this morning. I've been a little nervous about this, so just bear with me. I entitled, this is Things I Learned from My Father. My father loved his family and loved the place in which he was born, which was in Southern California and Los Angeles. But when he got out of World War II, he was mustered out into New York City. And my mother had met him there. And he looked at her and he said, there is no way that I can live and work in this place. And so he trusted his heart and she trusted him, and they moved to Los Angeles. My first thing that I learned from my father, trust your heart. Moving forward, when my father was 17 years old, he was sitting on the lawn in front of Glendale Hoover High School when a sheriff's car came up. And the sheriff's car came up to tell him that his father had had a heart attack and died. His father was a Los Angeles sheriff. My father's family had a mom and another brother. Neither of them worked, and there was no money. What my father taught me about that experience, I'm going to get teary too, Reverend Rich, is to keep going for family. With faith, you do what is the responsible thing to do, is to keep going and work hard. Those are the things he taught me. Keep going, have faith, maintain your responsibility to what is yours to do, and work hard. Then, as part of all of that, my father taught me about money, and you can understand why, given what I just told you about the loss of any income in their family. And he taught me mathematics or arithmetic. He taught me at a very young age about banking and checkbooks. But there's another thing about learning about this from my father is that there were consequences. Oh, it's great that you're doing that, Sue. But when I overdrew my checking account, there were consequences. And I learned about consequences from my father. Now, what he would say is when you make a mistake, you make a mistake. You correct it and you don't do it again. I learned that from my father. My father was very loyal to his friends, going back to Glendale Hoover High School. And as I grew up and as an adult, I would be around these wonderful people who Dad grew up with. He was very loyal to his friends, and they had so much fun together. Fun was something that my dad taught me, and he loved sports. But one of the things he taught me for sports, just thinking about what my father taught me, is that evidently when I was about 3 years old, he put me in a life jacket and we went to the beach in Long Beach. And he would take me, my dad loved to surf. He would take me and my little 3-year-old self in a life jacket, and he would drop me on the top of a wave, and I would ride in to shore. Loving it, absolutely loving it. So after that, I became a swimmer and a surfer and a sailor. That's what my dad taught me. My dad was kind, but he was also a very generous person. As he went from nothing to becoming a successful businessman, he became generous and ultimately founded the mobile dialysis program out of the USC Medical Center. And this was a program of having I think it was probably some kind of a mobile something where they would go to people's houses with kidney failure and be able to provide dialysis assistance to them. My father was the instigator and offered much to make that happen. But I would say lastly that what my father taught with everything I've told you about is how important it was to make a positive difference in the world by being kind and loving. Thank you. Oh, and my father's name was George Sidney Barton. Sidney with a Y.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you. That was wonderful. Thank you. I was wondering if you were going to tell it. I had written down a similar story about my own father about putting you in a life jacket and dropping you, but it was about my father teaching me how to swim. And he, remember the days where they had high dive boards? So he goes up, he says, "Watch this, Richard," goes up the steps of the high dive, way up, jumps up, does a fork, and goes in perfectly in the water. Said, "Did you see that?" Then came over and picked me up and dropped me in the deep end and said, "Swim." Well, my mother had a stroke. No, but, so dads are dads. And, Harry, tell us some things your dad taught you.
Well, he taught me a lot. Growing up on the farm, my father invited my 3 brothers and me to help with all kinds of projects that involved building things, fixing things, whatever. And if we didn't know how something worked or what it needed, we had to figure it out. So this was a do-it-yourself world where we pretty much needed to do all kinds of things on the farm, whether mechanical or building new animal pens or fixing fence or whatever, taking care of the animals and things like that. So we learned how things worked. And so for a number of years, my favorite book was titled How Things Work and What to Do When They Don't. It was a useful thing to have around when I needed to figure out how something worked and how to fix it. He also taught me that you have a job to do and you need to do it right. I translated this to my professional life, where my mantra was do the right thing in the right way, and the results will stand for themselves, whether you're on one side of the argument or the other. If you're impartial and you do the right thing, it's the way to go. He also taught me that other people are going to depend on what I do. So you need to be dependable. Do what you say you're going to do, and do it in the right way, so people know they can depend on you. Long days on the farm were pretty routine. So whether it was milking cows before dark, that was mostly his job. We sometimes did the milking before we went to school, but mostly it was my dad who did that. Work all day and then milk the cows again before dark or after dark. And this was all hand milking. We didn't have milking machines. It was a small dairy operation that we had. But when the job was done, yes, you could have some time to go play in the creek or go fishing or do something else that you wanted to do. And if it was Sunday and there was a baseball game on the radio, we didn't have TV, so we got maybe to listen to a baseball game or the Lone Ranger or Gene Autry or whatever else was going on the radio. And we could imagine all kinds of things, but there wasn't a lot of seeing the action back in those days. He also encouraged my brothers and me to take on 4-H and FFA projects, whether it was our pigs or chickens or turkeys or dairy cows or the cotton or the corn or whatever project we had, field crops or animal projects, to take care of our project, make sure that the animals were fed and watered and taken care of, and the crops were weeded or harvested or whatever needed to be done, and keep a record along the way of expenses and how much we spent and how much we earned. And over the years, that helped me do our family income tax for many years, but eventually I gave up and resorted to an accountant. But in my professional life, I learned to keep a journal of where I was and what I was doing when I was out on field work, and keep good records of specimen collections and my activities, so that I could write whatever needed to be written, whether it was my thesis or professional papers later on. So it was important to keep good records and to be accurate, to be dependable. I think those were the keystone of my growing up. And I thank my father for having taught me those things.
Harry, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Harry Ollendorf. Thank you, Harry. Thank you, Sue. Patricia, thank you for platforming today. It's always a joy to have you platforming. David Trolley for music, and David Morse for the slides, Kevin and Bob for their assistance in video and Zooming. Thank you. And thank you, Dad. Thank you, fathers.